setback or the biggest thing that we need to get into as far as the youth basketball they see it itself? Because I've been training and coaching, and a lot of kids lack a lot of fundamentals that we were talking about. And what's the biggest fix that we need to kind of step into? Like, what's the beginning of that step? That's kind of like the broad conversation. You already going live?
I'm already live, yeah.
Okay.
I'm always click it early because I don't want to miss any good discussion. Yeah, if y'all want to come over
Yeah, I
here,
can slide in. So.
we can kind of fit it. Tony slide into the frame. Be a good time.
What you doing, Vaughn? You not joining us?
I'm a nobody. I'm here to listen.
No.
Man, get in here. We need
You're all somebody's, man.
Honestly, you're the closest
I think
to
I'll go
the
ahead.
youth.
Yeah, go ahead, kick it
Yeah.
off.
I think the biggest thing on like younger levels, I think we need to play at lower rims, smaller balls. So, I mean, kids are developing shot mechanics that are totally bad when they're trying to shoot at a 10-foot rim. So I think, 8-foot rims. I also think at that young age, third grade and younger, teach a lot out of 3-on-3. They don't need to be playing 5-on-5, just understanding spacing. And there needs to be a lot more skill development, fundamental stuff, and not less games. They don't even need to be playing games really at that age. Just really, like what I always say, you never graduate a skill. Well, they got to develop the skill first of all before they can actually do it. So, I mean, just a lot of ball handling, shooting mechanics, defensive positioning. And obviously, I don't think you should be playing zone defense at that young age too, because you're trying to develop these different skills.
So when do you think they graduate to that level where they should be playing games? Is that a certain age or a certain grade, or is that until they get to that level, then they start playing?
So, I mean, I think it's a little bit different for each kid. I mean, obviously, you're going to have some kids that are more talented that are probably ready earlier than some of the others. But, like, some of these kids can't even dribble,
Of course.
travel every time they touch it. I don't think they should be playing games. You need to develop a skill set in order to play in a game. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess broad range, maybe, 4th, 5th grade.
Of course.
I think a big factor is parents because, and look, I'm a parent. Obviously, my kids are a lot older, but when my kid was a little kid playing Little League basketball, parents want the kid to progress so fast and not build a foundation. And sometimes they're busy enabling their kid instead of letting somebody coach them. And so I think parents need to take their ego out of it and let the kids have fun.
Just to piggyback on that with one skill that I think, like when you're talking about skill development, like as a person that now in Charlotte has worked with a lot of those ages, a skill that's just overlooked and no one focuses on, and you hit on is starting and stopping. Like starting, being able to dribble without traveling, starting, and then jump stop or stop without traveling. Like we focus that in Charlotte Skill Factory, a lot of like starting and stopping is a skill. And if you don't have that skill, we don't need to worry about 2-ball dribbling. We don't need to worry about jellies. We don't need to worry about floaters. It's like, let's get to, like Jason talked, have a skill set before you try to go. And you wouldn't just give somebody a math test if you've never talked about 1 + 1, 2 + 2. Like there's just the basics, understanding what 1 means and what 2 means and so on and so forth.
That's the problem with like what you're saying is like we see Steph Curry and all these trainers, what they do with those elite level players. Well, Steph Curry built a skill set from a young age where he wasn't doing step back 30-footers. And so they developed something earlier that allowed them to, get to that expertise.
From a scout perspective, Dave, because when did you start like scouting Steph and then now? Because I've like heard stories and being a little bit around Del Curry, like they changed his shot in high school because he was shooting from his hip, wasn't quite strong enough and like missed a lot of shots. But like as somebody that's obviously been a part of the whole game, what do you see as that progression for shooting specifically?
With what I do now, I would have seen him earlier probably, but at that point in time with the Bulls, I didn't see him until he was a freshman in college. And, he obviously came on the scene and blossomed quickly. He had the benefit of 2 parents that were very fine athletes. And his father, Case, a great shooter, so that helped him learn how to do things. But I think one of the things that his parents have done. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the people love Steph, right? They don't realize what they're going to miss when Steph's gone. He's so much better than they even think he is, and I'm not talking about as a player, as a teammate, as help, being integral to the culture of Golden State and those things. and I benefited because of this weird deal, but my former brother-in-law sold his home to Steph. Not the home Steph lives in now, but previously. And so my wife's nieces became their babysitters. And so I know that what Aisha and Steph were like with people that are babies, they're so down to earth, you know. I mean, look, he's got an ego. We all do. Guy's won. I mean, he should have an ego. But for a player that's reached that level, he is so much more grounded than most. And I have the utmost respect in that regard. And so I think part of that is that how he was raised. And so he was probably raised to develop those skills and not run too fast, not have to do the step back before he can do just a plain set shot, right? And that happens too fast with people. Trainers are trying to make their name for this. No, wait a second. Teach them how to stop and start with the ball, do simple things first, and then they'll be able to develop after they got that foundation.
Like cooking eggs, everybody learn how to cook eggs or whatever. And as you get that habit of, okay, I want to add some salt and pepper or a different type of, season or flavor to it or whatever. Like Coach Showalter said in his book, you never graduate from, skills. You never do. That's why I do the box drills with our freshmen. Every single freshman team we have, they do box drills. You know how we try to work on shooting from the top or whatever? I think we should just start at the bottom, working with how their feet should be, or whatever, just working all the way up to their hips, then to your hands and stuff like that, your eyes and all that stuff. But, and Jason, he lived in Louisiana. He know the athletes that we have. I think we got probably the best athletes in America, but we don't have that skill set. And Coach Bollwinkel, he can probably piggyback off this. Look at Javante, whatever, could play. But when he going up against some guys that's really skilled, and they got this, this is what Steph Curry got because he's been around the game for so long. He see the game so different.
Slow motion.
Like it's crazy, like the stuff that he encountered with his growing up around his dad and NBA players.
So do y'all think that they specialize too young with kids as far as sports? And I'm going broader than basketball. I see a lot of kids nowadays, parents are like, hey, you're going basketball or anything, or they force them into that sport because of their own personal, maybe success or failure, so to speak. Do you feel like they push them in it too hard to where they're burning out? Or because I know it's a lot of talent that I have around Birmingham that could have made it, but got burned out too quick, and now they're having those regrets.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in elementary school, I'm playing on the monkey bars, and we played basketball, we played football, we played all types of stuff, but I think you kind of pick on your own what you want to do, whatever. And I was telling one of my brothers back home, I said, I think with the Houston Hoops team, they probably played 50 games. And we played 34 games in high school. I mean, that's a lot of games. I mean, these kids still playing. I'll be tired of basketball too.
Well, and the other thing is the repetitive motions is what wear joints out. So if you play multiple sports, you're not having the same motion. You're developing stuff. Let's say you're a soccer player, all right? You're getting some ideas about spacing on the field, on the pitch, and so forth, much like basketball. Water polo, these sports are all similar to basketball. Kid ought to play some of that a little bit. You guys watch Yoshi shoot and all the stuff he does with ball up here. He was a water polo player. That all came from having to do these things playing water polo. The transference of another sport to this, and it helps keep from the burnout, like you're saying, Nehemiah. You think about this: the guys that really burn out fast, swimmers burn out because they've been having 2-hour practice every morning, every night since the time they were 7. And by the time they're 13, they're tired of it. And it's still got to be a game and enjoyable.
I think on both questions, it comes back to we talking about parents or those that are advising the youth. And like Kern mentioned, the things that need to be changed in the game. Like it's been identified, that's the USA basketball curriculum. But who is going to take the initiative to really take the hits? Because I tried where I'm at and outside of Atlanta to do skills and drills. And I mean, I'm worried about kids running with the football, like running with the basketball like it's a football. And then we went on holiday break, and I was going to do 3-on-3 and like the model like we're talking about, not with the lowering of goals because that infrastructure is a little different. But then too much parents complaining.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we added game dates, and then we get, the game dates, and the kids' skill level was nowhere near being able to play games. But, we talk about master the boring or fall in love with the boring. It's like the process, and parents are trying to microwave it. And if it's not instant, then they're wanting to jump to a sport and try to find an easy path. And I have those conversations as a high school coach all the time about kids quitting like whatever sport to focus. I never advise that because it naturally happens. It naturally happens.
And I think previous, and that's just me, y'all probably know a little bit more as well, but the previous athletes that went on to play professional were multi-athletes.
LeBron didn't stop playing football until he was a junior.
Exactly. But I have kids in the 6th grade, and before they even reach middle school, they already, this is what I want to do. And they don't even know if the growth plates are going to open up anymore.
Yeah.
And that's different sports. We can go actually into basketball now, and I will ask you this, or ask everyone this: when do you specialize in a position in basketball? And that's a tough question for me because at a young age, I try not to anybody in middle school going to high school. I think they should be open to any position because they don't know how they're going to turn out or when they're going to start growing. You never know what may happen in between that time. So as far as position wise, when would you say that a person should?
I don't think you specialize in a position. I mean, if you see how the world's catching up to us, it's because of the curriculum that they have. They're 5'9" point guards are learning how to post up and play like posts. Their posts are learning how to handle like a point guard. And especially with the way basketball is evolving, like it's a positionless game now almost. Or post now. I mean, back in the day, a Luka Garza, 15, 20 years ago, would have been a top 2 pick and be dominating the league inside. But now he can't guard on the perimeter. It's hard for him to even get a contract. Back when we had bigs that were back to the basket guys. Now you got to be able to go guard 1 through 5, and you got to be able to shoot it from the 3. The game just changed so much. Unless you're a lob threat and can guard, you can't find look at the top 3 bigs in the college basketball this year. None of them got drafted.
I got a good friend that played in the MLB for 10 years, Ben Sheets. His 2 sons or whatever, he'll pitch or whatever. But he made his kids play every sport. And when they got to baseball, they didn't start throwing until they were like in high school. Yeah, in center field. Yeah, at first base. Yeah, at DH. Sometimes they didn't play, or whatever. But like in basketball, he had to play everything. Because he said he might be short, he might be tall. We just don't know. So they worked on different things before, like seeing the game and stuff like that. I do think you need to learn the game.
Like if
you can learn the game, it'll slow down for you. Then the number one thing he always wanted with his kids, make sure they still have fun, which they do.
I think your skill set, if you're going to do competitive, because philosophically, it is great. But I think, as you're getting to that elite level, as EYBL, RISE, 3SSB, your skill set determines your, I don't think any coach now, you look at the top guys, Cooper Flagg, AJ, and Cameron, all those guys are huge, but they're all guards, and no one's telling them. But if they didn't have that skill set, they'd be saying get inside or get off the ball. But if your skill set dictates that you can play at a competitive level, whatever the level that is, your skill set matches that, you can play. If your skill set doesn't match that, then you get pigeonholed into a position, and that obviously goes into the work. And I think, the fun part is the biggest thing that we're missing from the game, because it's a game. And I think, people want to take things from the game. I want a scholarship. I want to do this, that, and the third. I want to go here. The focus thing. I have the best answer. When people tell them I'm focused, I hand them what they say I'm focus on baseball. I toss them a baseball and say stare at it. Focus on what's that even mean? Basically, you're just going to stop trying a few new things. You're going to stop being open-minded. And, who knows? There's, plenty of examples of kids that just did a different sport for a different motion to be a teammate, individual sports, whether track and field, golf, that are different competitively, that are still enhancing your mindset enhancing your skills of like, whether it's individual or if I go out and run a bad racing track, I can't say it's Nehemiah's fault that I went out and ran poor. Like, and I think that personal accountability is huge as well. So when you're developing, make it fun, try to, give it a variety and not allow, I don't say no, obviously anybody can do whatever they want, but if push back on some, with kids, we've got a third grader that's ranked on my team. I'm not going to go into how silly that is, but like his dad's telling me he's at this camp, and like, what camp does he go? I'm like, he needs to just shoot the ball, have fun. Like that's, my opinion, working with a lot of, the focus on the position or, specialization is kind of silly, especially the younger you are.
I think, and didn't mean to cut you off if you were about to talk, Dave, but you'll have the 6'5" player that can dominate a certain portion of the basketball game, looking at where they may be recruitable. So then they're trying to become something they're not, and trying to become the guard and trying. So it's not that they're getting pigeonholed, but if you do something at like an elite level, trying to all of a sudden add, like in your later years of high school, of like, if you want to be the next Steph Curry, now you're not even doing anything at a high enough level where you won't have any opportunities. So I think, again, do find two things to really do it at an elite level, but also adding and sprinkling things within your player development. But no, just say, hey, go to the block and sit, like that ain't it. But anytime you open it up in these environments for guys to go to posts or guards, you'll have the whole camp go to guards because they're
I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, because everybody heard the saying of jack of all trades is a master of none. Yeah. When do you specify in that, like, okay, let's say that I'm versatile. When do I specify in that field, like, okay, I'm going to be that shooting guard and not a slasher, or I'm going to be the point guard that doesn't score, like I'm a Rondo type point guard that gets everybody involved, and I'm cerebral, where I'm just wanting to pick the team apart. When do I kind of figure out, okay, not saying that you need to stop, because even Rondo in his future even created a better jump shot as he went on. At what age do you kind of want to define as like, okay, I need to be great at this thing to move to the next level and then expand, if that makes sense? Or would you stay the same path and just keep it broad and just say, hey, go for it?
I think to get into the NBA, most guys have one skill they do really well. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're great players, Steph, LeBron, they do multiple things. But most guys who just do one thing really well. They might do other things okay, but the one thing is what gets them in the league. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you got to focus on that one thing. But we're talking about guys that are 20 plus years old. We're not talking about youth basketball. Mm-hmm. Youth basketball, they should all learn to play every position, of course. Learn how to play. The Europeans did that, and I agree with what Joel said, that's part of the reason the rest of the world is catching up with us, because of the fact that they learn to teach people to play inside and out better. Mm-hmm. Jokic doesn't just play on the block, even though he looks like a low post player. There are many players like that. And I think that's important for us. Greg talked about earlier about games too. The kids play too much, practice too little, and an offshoot of them playing too much is the games don't mean enough. That's one of the nice things about this camp. There's one game a day you play. So that means something. If you're playing 3 games a day, well, I lost it at 9, that's okay, I'll win at 3. I lost at 3, that's okay, I'll win at 8. That's a lot of that stuff goes on in youth basketball, AAU stuff. They play too much. They don't practice enough. I used to, when I was a coach, I would tell guys, you need to, every hour you play, whether it be 1-on-1, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, every hour you need to work on your game an hour. Now, that doesn't mean just shoot, or you may work with a teammate on your game, but you need to work on your skill set.
And I think that's more of a role that you're identified as, like when you're on a team too. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you're a slasher, you're going to be a 3-and-D guy. Mm-hmm. We hear that all the time now, especially in the league. You get a lot of 3-and-D guys. But like a lot of the point guards now, I mean, they're more than just facilitators. They're mm-hmm. a scoring point guard. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you can specialize and try to specialize that at some point. But I think that's more like they're going to get you and pick you on that team, and then your role is going to be identified on that team. Like, hey, we need you to be a 3-and-D guy. You're going to be our slasher. You're going to be our facilitator.
But to answer your question, I feel like high school is the main part when you figuring out your role, because high school is when you mostly start lifting weights and you start getting to a system. because I know most of the kids get picked up from high school off one skill set. Because if you're a shooter in high school, most of what you're gonna do is shoot and lift weights, try to get bigger to get to a different division. Because to me, with different divisions, it's not about skill, it's about size. Like you can go to a JUCO and have a 6'4" big, but just because he a big there doesn't mean if he goes to a D1 school, they're gonna bring him down there because his play style. But I don't mean to backtrack. The question I would have asked would go with yours with the changing of the ball size and goal. How do y'all feel about the basketball is not I would like to say united, because I know in different places everybody's still catching up. Because I know in Alabama where I'm from, we still don't have a shot clock, and I know ours just got one. And with the ball size change, I know, like I said, where we from, 6th grade is when you stop using a women's ball. And I don't know if it's true, but I heard Iowa doesn't stop using women's ball until 8th grade.
Yeah.
Boys.
Yeah,
So
freshman year they start using men's ball.
it's all like when you say about the changing of the goals and the ball size again, how would they go together when we haven't caught up with the stuff with high school?
I think not to take a quick sidetrack, but I think one thing I think you touched on is our game is displaced. Like if I'm a high school coach, there's very few high school coaches that have great relationships with club coaches. There's also very few club coaches that have great relationships with high school coaches. So I think that, and then to answer your question about how do you get that change, I think it naturally comes with your hand size growing as you grow up. And like shooting a ball is just like anything else. It's more of an eye and a repetition, because as your hands get bigger, you know, and I don't know, like Iowa versus other states or when the ball change should happen. But I think like there is something to be said for having the right size ball that fits in your hands and you can successfully complete the skill with the correct technique, as opposed to like where I'm like, well, when I'm in the NBA, I play with a 29.5 and we won't play with 28.5. Like I don't know when the correct age to change that is, but I think whatever age, you know, puberty hits, when your hands grow, you grow as a male. I think that's around the time that change is similar to like, you know, you go from being bitty ball, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, to then you go 3rd, 4th grade, you move up to the side sit, and so on and so forth.
Vaughn brought up the shot clock, and that's one of the problems in high school in our country. There are very few states where the shot clock is mandated, and that stunts the development of our players. We need to have a shot clock in all, you know, in every single state.
All right.
Yeah, I don't want to keep it too long. Yes.
No,
Yeah,
we
We don't want to show off your badass. Hey, make sure you subscribe.
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
As always, appreciate it.
No,
Well,
thank
another
you.
thing